In this video I'm going to talk about porting a game from the Spectrum Next to the ZX81. Both machines have the same CPU, the Zilog Z80, and that makes it a reasonably straightforward task. I'm working on redeveloping a game I wrote as a teenager in the 80s to run on these platforms. My game Caverns on the Spectrum Next is now about 2/3 complete, with 4 or 5 features still to add. It's taking shape and getting to the point where it's playable. I normally code on it through the winter when the weather is bad. This year I might carry on though, into spring. It will be good to get it complete this year. Then I can move on to a Spectrum Next project with colour, high res and sound. The next version of the game now has working sprites, bridges and dwarfs, and I wanted to get all this new stuff across to the ZX81 version. Previously that had just loaded the screens and had working lifts. I discussed porting code from a Next to a ZX81 before in a previous video, but my main tools are Beyond Compare and Git for comparing code and keeping track of changes. Copying the recent code to date took maybe a day with a bit for testing. There are some bugs, but the vast majority of code is across. The dwarves and sprites went across very easily and needed very little work, which was great. There are some minor changes for differences in the two compilers. The add instruction is a bit different, and I'd use sub on the Next, which seems to work on there, but doesn't exist in the ZX81 compiler. I had to use SBC and got caught out by the need to clear the carry flag to get it working properly. Previously, the main difference between the Next and the ZX81 was the code to write to the display. The Next is high-res colour, while the ZX81 is low-res black and white. The main difference this time was with the input. The Next routine I'm using returns a pressed character in the A register. The ZX81 routine returns value in the BC register pair. I had to write code to translate the BC values to a single character in A for the ZX81. That way I could keep the rest of the code the same. Two other issues I've made previous videos about: compressing the data to fit in the ZX81 16K and using the CPDR instruction to speed up the dropping of blocks. Fun topics to look at on the ZX81, if a bit obscure for videos. I'm using the FSAMW ZX compiler for the ZX81, and an issue I had with this was with the number of files it supports. It seems to only allow a certain number of assembler files to be referenced. I had to combine code into libraries to reduce the number of files. The error it gave was quite obscure and unrelated. It took quite a while to figure out. There are differences in the code with loop delays, as the ZX81 runs much slower than the Next. I'm trying to keep the loop code for the delay similar, just having different numbers of iterations for the two machines. I'd like to be able to debug the ZX81 code as I can for the Next using CSpect. At the moment I don't have a usable debugging method for the ZX81, and this is something I probably need to figure out. Working on the ZX81 version, I identified some bugs in the Next code, so changes aren't all one way. I pushed these back to the Next code base. So here's to getting the game finished this year, ideally on both platforms. I'm enjoying seeing it run on the Next. It hasn't run on a Sinclair machine since the 1980s, and it's fun to see it taking shape. The ZX81 and Next are close enough in architecture for porting to not be too major a job. It helps if you separate out the code to handle the main differences between them, which are input from the keyboard and output to the display. The rest of the code will then work pretty much okay with minor tweaks. Thanks for watching and have fun with your own retro projects.